Ronan Calloway's hands trembled as he turned the first page of the worn-out leather diary. The air in his private study felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls were closing in around him. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the thought that maybe, just maybe, he shouldn't be doing this. But the moment his eyes caught the first few lines of his wife's neat, slanted handwriting, he knew there was no turning back. If Ronan ever finds this, everything will change. I love him, I always have, but there are things he doesn't know, things I never had the courage to tell him. If I had, maybe our lives would have been different. Maybe he wouldn't hate me when the truth comes out. Ronan blinked, his grip on the pages tightening. Hate her? What was she talking about? His mind reeled with possibilities, none of them pleasant. He had only stumbled upon the diary by accident, an old book, wedged between the shelves of their shared library. He had been searching for a file, nothing more. And yet, now, here he was, prying into words that were never meant for him. Elara Calloway had always been a mystery to him. Even after 20 years of marriage, there were parts of her he could never quite grasp, like shadows flickering just out of reach. They had met when he was still building his empire, before he became one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. Back then, she had been the woman who softened his sharp edges, the one who saw him not for his ambition but for the man beneath it. But over the years, the space between them had widened. The long nights at the office, the endless board meetings, the high-stakes deals, Ronan had convinced himself that it was all for them, for their future. And yet, somewhere along the way, they had stopped talking about anything beyond schedules, social appearances, and surface-level conversations. And now, here he was, staring at words that hinted at a secret he hadn't even known existed. Taking a steadying breath, he forced himself to keep reading. There's something I never told him. I was afraid that if he knew, he wouldn't look at me the same way. Maybe I was right. Maybe it was selfish of me to keep this from him. But I had no choice. His stomach twisted into knots. What could possibly be so terrible that she had carried this fear for years? His mind instantly went to betrayal. Was it another man? Had she been seeing someone behind his back? A cold, unfamiliar sensation settled in his chest. He kept reading. I've thought about telling him 100 times. But every time I open my mouth, I see his face in my mind, the way he trusts me, the way he believes in the life we've built together. And I know that if I say the words out loud, I'll never be able to take them back. Ronan felt an unbearable pressure in his chest. What was she trying to say? His fingers gripped the edges of the pages as if holding onto them would somehow prepare him for what came next. The diary continued, taking him back to moments he hadn't even realized had been important. She wrote about their early years, about the love and passion that once defined their relationship. But then, there were pages filled with loneliness. There were nights I lay beside him, wondering if he even saw me anymore. I wanted to tell him everything, but I was scared he would walk away. Or worse, stay out of duty, out of obligation. Because Ronan Calloway doesn't abandon responsibility. But I wanted more than that. I needed more than that. His breath caught in his throat. Had he really been so blind? He had thought their marriage was steady, even if it had lost some of its fire. But now, reading her words, he realized how wrong he had been. And then, just as he was about to turn the page, his phone buzzed on the desk beside him. The sharp vibration jolted him from his daze, and for a moment, he simply stared at the caller ID. Elara. His hands shook as he picked up the phone, pressing it to his ear. Ronan, she said, her voice steady, but there was something beneath it, something that made his chest tighten. Are you home? He swallowed hard, glancing at the diary. Yeah, he said slowly. I just got back. There was a pause, and then, I need to tell you something. It's important. His grip on the phone tightened. He had two choices, pretend he didn't know anything and let her tell him on her terms, or confront her right now. But a part of him wasn't ready for the confrontation. Not yet. "What is it?" he asked, keeping his voice controlled. Another pause. "I'd rather tell you in person. Are you free to talk tonight?" He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to sound casual. "Of course." When he hung up, he stared at the diary again, his pulse racing. Whatever she was about to tell him, he already knew it was going to change everything. And yet, even as he prepared himself for whatever confession she was about to make, something deep inside him whispered that he wasn't prepared at all. Ronan Calloway couldn't shake the feeling that his world was on the verge of shattering. The weight of the diary in his hands felt heavier than it should, as though the secrets it carried had somehow soaked into the pages themselves. He ran his fingers over the worn leather cover, debating whether to continue reading or to close it and wait for Alara to speak first. But he knew himself too well, patience was never his strong suit. He needed answers now. His mind raced as he considered the possibilities. Was there another man? The thought made his jaw clench. Had she been living a double life right under his nose? Or was it something even worse? The uncertainty was unbearable. He turned the page, his pulse thudding loudly in his ears. It started before we were married. Before he knew me as the woman he came home to every night. I should have told him back then. Maybe if I had, we would be in a different place now. But I was afraid. Afraid that he would walk away. Afraid that I would lose everything. Ronan frowned, his eyes scanning the next lines. Before they were married? That was over 2 decades ago. What secret could she have possibly carried for that long? His mind immediately went to something criminal, something catastrophic. But no, Alara wasn't that kind of woman. She was kind, selfless, always the one to hold their life together when he got lost in the chaos of work. But then again, maybe he had only seen what he wanted to see. His breath caught as he read the next passage. There was someone else. Not the way Ronan might think, not a betrayal of the heart, but a betrayal nonetheless. I loved him, but I also loved a part of my past that I was forced to leave behind. And I've been carrying that guilt with me every single day. The words blurred before his eyes. There was someone else? His stomach twisted, bile rising in his throat. The logical side of his brain told him to keep reading, to get the full story before jumping to conclusions. But the emotional side, the one he rarely let anyone see, was already unraveling. She had loved someone else. She had kept it from him. For 20 years. His hands tightened into fists, knuckles widening. He had been breaking his back for this marriage, for their life together, while she had been harboring some hidden love from the past. The anger surged, hot and unchecked, but he forced himself to keep reading. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I wanted to tell him 1,000 times, but how do you tell the man you love that there was a part of your life he was never meant to know? That there was a person out there who still has a claim on your heart, even if you walked away from them? His heart pounded as his mind scrambled to make sense of it. He wanted to dismiss it, to believe it was just nostalgia or guilt for a past relationship that no longer mattered. But something about the way she wrote, so raw, so desperate, told him otherwise. He flipped to the next page, and his breath caught in his throat. His name is Leo. A name. Finally, a name. It hit him like a freight train, but before he could even process it, his eyes darted to the next lines. He's grown now. He's not the little boy I left behind all those years ago. And every day, I wonder if he hates me for it. If he would even recognize me. If Ronan ever finds out, I don't know how he'll react. But I can't hide it any longer. I have to face this. A little boy? Ronan's entire body went rigid as realization dawned on him, the weight of her words slamming into him with an almost physical force. This wasn't about an old lover. This wasn't about infidelity. This was about a child. A child she had never told him about. His fingers tightened around the diary, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He felt like the room was spinning, the walls pressing in. His mind raced back over their entire marriage, combing through every conversation, every moment, every decision they had made together. How had she kept something like this from him? How had he never noticed the signs? The words blurred on the page, but he forced himself to focus. He needed to know everything. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was young, scared, and my parents told me it was the only option. I let them convince me that if I wanted a future, I had to give up my past. I let them take him away. I told myself it was for the best. That he would have a better life without me. His stomach twisted painfully. She had given up a child. Their marriage had been built on lies. All those years, building a life together, planning a future, while a piece of her heart had been missing. While a part of his life had been out there, existing in the world without him even knowing. The next passage made his blood turn ice cold. I found him. Ronan's grip on the diary faltered. His fingers trembled as he turned the page. I've been visiting him. Watching from a distance. He's so much like Ronan, more than he could ever know. But I couldn't tell him, not yet. I didn't want to disrupt his life. I didn't know how to explain. But now I don't have a choice. He's in trouble, and I have to step in. Even if it means losing everything. His entire body went numb. She had found him. She had been seeing him. And worst of all, she had kept all of it from Ronan. The rage, confusion, and betrayal hit him all at once. He shot up from his chair, knocking it back as he paced the room. His mind screamed for answers, demanded explanations that Alara wasn't here to give. Leo. The name echoed in his mind like a drumbeat, relentless and unyielding. Who was he? Where was he? And what kind of trouble was he in? Before he could even begin to process, his phone buzzed again. It was Alara. His hands shook as he answered. Ronan? Her voice was softer than usual, hesitant. He swallowed the lump in his throat, trying to keep his voice steady. Where are you? I'm on my way home. I need to tell you something. It's important. He closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. He already knew. Alara, he said, his voice low, strained, barely holding back the storm raging inside him. Who is Leo? Silence. A long, unbearable silence. Then, a shaky breath. You read it. His jaw clenched. Answer me. I wanted to tell you myself, she whispered, her voice breaking. I was going to tell you tonight. It didn't matter. It was too late. He already knew. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. Ronan Calloway stood in the center of his study, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, drowning out everything else. The weight of the revelation sat on his chest like an immovable force, suffocating him with every passing second. His wife, his partner, the woman he had built an entire life with, had kept something so monumental from him. A child. His child? No, he couldn't make that assumption yet. But every instinct in his body screamed that this was more than just a mistake from Alara's past. There was a reason she had been visiting this Leo. There was a reason she had hidden the truth for decades. His voice was low, deadly calm. Tell me everything. Ronan, please, Alara's voice wavered, pleading. Not like this. Let's talk when I get home. He wasn't sure if it was the panic in her voice or the sheer weight of everything crashing down on him, but he suddenly felt unsteady, like the ground beneath him was shifting. He had always been a man in control, of his life, of his business, of his emotions. But right now, he had never felt more lost. "Where are you?" His voice came out rough, strained. A pause. "I'm almost home. Just, please, wait for me." He wanted to demand answers now, wanted to make sense of the chaos burning through his mind. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he wanted to hear the truth. The line went dead. Ronan stared at his phone for a long moment, his mind cycling through memories, searching for anything, any sign, that could have warned him of this. Had there been clues? He thought back to the past few years, the moments Elara had seemed distant, the way she sometimes disappeared without explanation. He had assumed it was because of him, because he had buried himself in work, because he had let their marriage become secondary to his empire. But had it been something more? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut through his thoughts like a blade. His body went rigid as he turned toward the window, watching as Elara's black sedan came to a slow stop. The moment she stepped out of the car, he knew. She looked different. It wasn't the sleek designer dress she wore, or the careful way she carried herself, it was something in her eyes. Something raw, something fragile, something that told him she had been preparing for this moment long before he had. She already knew she was about to break his heart. Ronan forced himself to stay where he was, gripping the edges of the desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He listened as the front door opened, as the soft click of her heels echoed through the silent house. A second later, she appeared in the doorway of his study. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The woman he had spent 2 decades of his life with stood before him, looking smaller than he had ever seen her. She knew what he had read. She knew there was no undoing it. "Elara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Is he mine?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. She sucked in a sharp breath. "Ronan, answer me." His voice was steel now, sharp and cutting. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "Yes." The world tilted. Ronan felt like the air had been stolen from his lungs. His grip on the desk tightened, his entire body going stiff as the reality of what she had just said crashed down on him with a force so violent it nearly knocked him off his feet. His son. For 20 years. She had kept his own flesh and blood from him. "Elara," his voice cracked, something between rage and heartbreak lacing his tone. "You let me live my life without knowing I had a son." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't have a choice." "Didn't have a choice?" His voice rose now, incredulous. "You had a choice every single day for the last 20 years, and you still kept this from me." She took a step closer. "Ronan, please, you have to understand. I was young. I was scared. My..." In her eyes. Something raw, something fragile, something that told him she had been preparing for this moment long before he had. She already knew she was about to break his heart. Ronan forced himself to stay where he was, gripping the edges of the desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He listened as the front door opened, as the soft click of her heels echoed through the silent house. A second later, she appeared in the doorway of his study. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The woman he had spent 2 decades of his life with stood before him, looking smaller than he had ever seen her. She knew what he had read. She knew there was no undoing it. "Elara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Is he mine?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. She sucked in a sharp breath. "Ronan, answer me." His voice was steel now, sharp and cutting. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "Yes." The world tilted. Ronan felt like the air had been stolen from his lungs. His grip on the desk tightened, his entire body going stiff as the reality of what she had just said crashed down on him with a force so violent it nearly knocked him off his feet. His son. For 20 years. She had kept his own flesh and blood from him. Ilara, his voice cracked, something between rage and heartbreak lacing his tone. You let me live my life without knowing I had a son. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't have a choice. Didn't have a choice. His voice rose now, incredulous. You had a choice every single day for the last 20 years, and you still kept this from me. She took a step closer. Ronan, please, you have to understand. I was young. I was scared. And no matter how shattered he felt, no matter how much he wanted to break something, he wasn't going to fail his son. His voice was quieter now, more controlled. Where is he? Ilara wiped at her tears, looking up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. I don't know exactly. But I can find out. Ronan nodded once, jaw tight. Do it. And just like that, the course of his entire life had changed forever. Ronan Calloway had spent his life making impossible decisions. It came with the territory of running $1 billion empire, choosing when to invest, when to cut losses, when to push forward despite the odds. But standing in his dimly lit study, facing the woman who had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about his past, he realized that no business decision had ever left him feeling this paralyzed. He had a son. A son he had never known about. A son who was in trouble. The rage inside him burned hot, but beneath it, tangled in the betrayal and disbelief, was something far worse, guilt. For 20 years, Leo had been out there, growing up in a world Ronan had never been a part of. Had he needed him? Had he spent nights wondering why his father had never come for him? Had he suffered because Ronan hadn't known he existed? And now, when he finally learned the truth, the first thing he heard was that his son was in danger. Ronan turned away from Ilara, hands braced against the desk. His voice was dangerously calm when he spoke. Tell me everything. Now. Ilara hesitated, wringing her hands together. Ronan, everything. He turned sharply, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. No more secrets. She swallowed hard, nodding. Leo was placed in the foster system after I gave him up. I didn't know what happened to him for years, my parents made sure of that. But a few years ago, I started searching. I found him. She paused, as if the weight of her words were suffocating her. He aged out of the system at 18. No real family, no safety net. He had to survive on his own. Ronan's fists clenched. The thought of his son, alone in the world while Ronan had been living in luxury made his stomach churn. And? Ilara exhaled shakily. He's in trouble, Ronan. He got involved with the wrong people. I don't know all the details, but I know he's scared. He's trying to get out of something, but they won't let him walk away. Ronan's blood ran cold. Who won't let him walk away? I don't know, she admitted. I've only been able to get bits and pieces from a friend of his. He doesn't know I exist, at least, not as his mother. I've been watching from a distance, trying to protect him without interfering. Ronan let out a sharp breath, dragging a hand down his face. Watching? That's all you've been doing? Watching while our son is drowning? Tears glistened in her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. I was afraid if I told him the truth, he'd hate me. Ronan shook his head, his mind spinning. Hate you? You think that matters right now? Ilara, he doesn't need apologies, he needs help. And we're going to find him. Tonight. Ilara hesitated, then nodded. I have an address. Ronan didn't wait for another word. He grabbed his coat and his keys, already moving. Then let's go. The drive through the city was silent, tension thick in the air. Ronan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his thoughts racing. His empire had given him power, control, the ability to manipulate the world around him, but this was different. This was personal. And for the first time in years, he felt like he had no control at all. Elara guided him to a rundown neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, a place Ronan would have never imagined his son living in. The buildings were old, crumbling under years of neglect, streetlights flickering weakly. "This is where he stays sometimes," Elara murmured. Ronan parked and stepped out, scanning the area. His gut twisted. He had spent years ensuring his name was synonymous with wealth, power, success. But here, his son had been surviving in the shadows. He turned to Elara, his expression unreadable. "Stay in the car. Ronan, stay in the car." His voice left no room for argument. He moved toward the apartment building, instincts honed from years in the business world guiding his steps. He knew when a deal smelled rotten. And right now? The entire area reeked of danger. The door to the building was slightly ajar. Ronan pushed it open, stepping inside. The air was thick with the scent of cigarettes and damp concrete. A single flickering light buzzed above, casting eerie shadows down the narrow hallway. He moved forward, scanning the apartment numbers until he reached the one Elara had given him. He knocked once. Silence. Then, footsteps. The door cracked open just enough for a pair of wary eyes to peer through. "Yeah?" Ronan's voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. "I'm looking for Leo." The door opened wider, revealing a young man, probably early 20s, thin, rough around the edges. "Who's asking?" Ronan stared him down. "His father." The young man blinked, clearly startled. "You? No way. Where is he?" A hesitation. Then, "Not here. But if you're really his father, you should know, he's in deep." Ronan's jaw tightened. "How deep?" The man glanced around as if making sure no one else was listening. "He owes money. To the wrong people. And they don't just let people walk away." Ronan felt a slow, simmering rage coil in his chest. No one touched his family. No one. "Where?" The man hesitated. "There's a bar. East side of town. Called the Hollow. If he's anywhere, he's probably there." Ronan didn't wait for more. He turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone. "Elara," he said as soon as he slid into the driver's seat. "We're going to the Hollow." She paled. I don't care," he cut her off, his voice like steel. "We're getting him out. No matter what it takes." The drive was a blur. The city lights flashed past them, but all Ronan could think about was Leo. When they arrived, Ronan stepped out first, his presence commanding. The bar was dimly lit, crowded with people who didn't look like they belonged in polite society. He stepped inside, scanning the room. And then, there. In the far corner, hunched over a drink, was a young man who looked so much like him it made Ronan's breath catch. Leo. His son. Ronan moved before he could think, crossing the room in long, determined strides. The moment he reached the table, Leo looked up, sharp, wary eyes meeting Ronan's for the first time. The young man frowned. "Do I know you?" Ronan exhaled slowly. "No," he pulled out the chair across from him. "But we need to talk." Leo stared at him for a long moment, then scoffed, shaking his head. "Sorry, old man. I don't have time for whatever this is." Ronan leaned forward, voice low. "I'm your father." Leo froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. And then, the entire world changed. For the first time in his life, Ronan Calloway saw fear in his son's eyes. Not just fear, but something deeper, something more dangerous. It wasn't the wide-eyed panic of a child caught doing something wrong, nor was it the fleeting anxiety of a young man unsure of his future. It was the look of someone who had spent years expecting the worst. Someone who had already learned that trusting others only led to pain. Leo's fingers curled around his glass, his knuckles white as he let out a short, bitter laugh. "You've got the wrong guy." Ronan didn't flinch. He had spent his entire career in boardrooms, negotiating deals with men twice as ruthless as the kid sitting across from him. But this wasn't a business deal. This was his son. And he wasn't leaving without him. "I don't," Ronan said, voice steady. "You're Leo." Leo smirked, leaning back in his chair, but his eyes darted toward the exit. "Calculating. Planning. Sure, that's my name. But you're no one to me." Ronan's jaw clenched. He had expected resistance, had prepared for it, but something about the way Leo said those words made his chest tighten in a way he wasn't prepared for. "No one to me." The words stung more than they should have. "I know about Alara," Ronan said, watching Leo's reaction carefully. "I know she's been watching over you. I know you're in trouble. And I know you don't have anyone to help you." Leo's face darkened at the mention of his mother. He grabbed his drink and downed the rest in one go before slamming the glass onto the table. "She's got nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this," Ronan countered. "She's the reason I'm here." That made Leo pause. His fingers tapped against the table, restless. "So, what? She finally decided to tell you I exist? Took her long enough." He let out another sharp laugh. "What do you want? An apology? Because I don't owe you anything." Ronan exhaled slowly, keeping his temper in check. "I don't want an apology." "Then what do you want?" Ronan didn't hesitate. "I want to help you." Leo's expression shifted, but it was fleeting, a crack in the armor before the walls slammed back up. "I don't need your help." "Yes, you do." Ronan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You're in trouble. And the people you're involved with? They don't just let people walk away." That did it. The mask slipped for half a second, just long enough for Ronan to see the truth. Leo was terrified. He tried to cover it with a scoff, but it was weaker this time. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ronan shook his head. "Don't lie to me, son." Leo flinched at the word son, and for a moment, real pain flashed across his face. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "You're wasting your time," Leo muttered, pushing his chair back. "You don't know me. You don't know my life." Ronan reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He slid it across the table. "This is my number. You call me when you're ready." Leo stared at it. Didn't touch it. Didn't acknowledge it. After a long moment, he pushed his chair back, standing. "Nice meeting you, Ronan." He walked away. Ronan sat there, staring at the untouched business card, a storm brewing inside him. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. Ronan didn't go home that night. He didn't sleep. Instead, he made phone calls. By morning, he had a full report on Leo's life. Where he lived, who he associated with, and, most importantly, who he owed money to. The name that came back was one Ronan recognized. Victor Moretti. A lone shark. Ruthless. Dangerous. Connected to some of the worst criminals in the city. Leo had borrowed money from Moretti's people, and now they wanted it back, with interest. A lot of interest. Ronan didn't hesitate. He got in his car and drove. The warehouse was exactly what he expected, run down, empty except for the few men standing outside, watching everything with sharp, predatory eyes. Ronan parked his car and stepped out, unbuttoning his suit jacket as he approached. One of the men stepped forward, smirking. "You lost, old man." Ronan smiled. But it wasn't friendly. "I'm looking for Moretti." The smirk faded slightly. The man glanced at his partner before nodding toward the door. Inside. Ronan walked in. Victor Moretti was sitting at a metal desk, casually flipping through a stack of bills. He looked up when Ronan entered, his expression amused. Well. If it isn't Ronan Calloway." Ronan didn't bother with pleasantries. "You have a debt under the name Leo." Moretti raised an eyebrow. "I do. I want to buy it." Moretti chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "See, that's not how this works. Your boy borrowed from me. He owes me. And I don't just let debts go." Ronan didn't blink. "How much?" Moretti grinned. $100,000. Ronan pulled out his checkbook. "Done." Moretti snorted. "I think you misunderstand. The money isn't the issue. It's the principle. If I let him walk away, everyone else thinks they can, too." Ronan met his gaze without flinching. "So let's make a deal." Moretti considered this, then nodded. "All right, Calloway. You take his debt. But that means you owe me now." Ronan smirked. "I wouldn't count on that." He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. A second later, Moretti's own phone buzzed. He frowned, pulling it out. His face changed instantly. That, Ronan said smoothly, "is a legal document transferring ownership of every property your business operates out of. I bought them this morning. Which means, Moretti, if you don't accept my deal, you'll be running your operations out of a dumpster." Moretti's jaw clenched. Ronan smiled. "Shall I write the check?" Moretti glared at him for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, he leaned back. "Fine. The kid's debt is yours." Ronan finished writing the check, placed it on the desk, and turned to leave. Before he reached the door, Moretti's voice called out. "You think that boy's gonna be grateful? Think he's gonna run into your arms?" Ronan paused, then glanced over his shoulder. "No," he admitted. "But I don't need him to be. I just need him safe." Then, without another word, he walked out. And for the first time in his life, he had done something that had nothing to do with business. This was about family. Whether Leo wanted it or not, days passed, and Ronan waited. He wasn't a patient man by nature, but this was different. This wasn't about sealing a deal or manipulating a market, this was his son. A son who didn't even know whether he wanted to acknowledge him. A son who had been fighting battles alone for years. Ronan had handled the debt. Moretti was off Leo's back. But that didn't mean Leo was safe, not from the damage life had already done to him. So Ronan waited. And then, 3 nights later, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he answered it instantly. A pause. Then, "Why did you do it?" Leo's voice was quiet, edged with something Ronan couldn't quite name. Ronan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "Because I could." A bitter chuckle. "You think money fixes everything, huh?" "No," Ronan admitted. "But it fixes this." Silence. "Then, so that's it? You just buy my debt and think we're good? That I'm supposed to be grateful?" Ronan didn't flinch. "You don't have to be grateful. You just have to be alive." Another silence. This one longer. "I didn't ask you to help me." "I know." "Then why?" Ronan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Because you're my son." A sharp inhale. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to just show up now and act like it means something." Ronan's grip on the phone tightened. You think I don't know that? His voice was rough, edged with something raw. You think I don't hate myself for not knowing about you sooner? For not being there? Leo scoffed. And yet, here you are. Playing hero. I'm not a hero, Ronan said quietly. I'm just a man who refuses to make the same mistake twice. Another pause. Then, meet me. Ronan's pulse kicked up. When? Now. He didn't hesitate. Where? Ronan found Leo standing outside a 24-hour diner, hands stuffed into the pockets of his worn-out hoodie, shoulders tense. He looked small despite the anger rolling off him in waves. For a moment, Ronan just stood there, studying him. His son. Leo noticed and let out a sharp breath. You're staring. Can't help it. Leo scoffed. You see what you paid for? Ronan frowned. I didn't pay for you. Leo's jaw tightened. Sure feels like it. Ronan stepped closer. You got a problem with being helped? I got a problem with someone swooping in and pretending they care when they don't even know me. Ronan exhaled. Fair enough. Leo narrowed his eyes. That's it? No defense? No, I really do care, son, speech? Ronan shrugged. Would it change anything? Leo looked away. Ronan studied him carefully. He wasn't angry. Not really. He was scared. Scared of being let down. Scared of believing. Scared of hoping. So Ronan did what no one else probably had. He waited. Eventually, Leo sighed. Look, I didn't call you to fight. I needed to know why. I already told you. Leo shook his head. Not good enough. Ronan ran a hand down his face. What do you want, Leo? Leo's fingers twitched in his pockets. I want to know what the hell I'm supposed to do with this. With you. Ronan understood. Leo had spent his life without a father. And now, one had appeared out of nowhere. Rich, powerful, untouchable. Too late. So Ronan made a choice. Then don't do anything, he said simply. Leo blinked. What? Don't do anything. Don't try to force a relationship. Don't try to forgive me if you're not ready. Don't do a damn thing you don't want to. Leo studied him warily. And what are you gonna do? Ronan met his gaze. I'm gonna be here. Whether you want me to or not. Something flickered in Leo's expression. A test. A challenge. You really think it's that easy? No, Ronan admitted. But it's a start. Leo let out a slow breath. He looked exhausted. Not just physically, but in the way people got when life had kicked them down too many times. After a long silence, he sighed. I'm not calling you Dad. Ronan smirked. Didn't expect you to. Another silence. Then, I'm hungry. Ronan nodded toward the diner. Then let's eat. Leo hesitated. Then, for the first time, he followed. And Ronan knew. It wasn't a fix.